The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. There was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem at the Sheep Gate a pool called in Hebrew Bethesda, with 5 porticos. In these lay a large number of ill, blind, lame, and crippled. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been ill for a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. While I'm on my way, someone else gets down there before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your mat, and walk." Immediately the man became well, took up his mat, and walked. Now that day was a Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who was cured, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to carry your mat." He answered them, "The man who made me well told me, 'Take up your mat and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who told you, 'Take it up and walk'?" The man who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had slipped away, since there was a crowd there. After this, Jesus found him in the temple area and said to him, "Look, you are well. Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went and told the Jews that Jesus was the one who had made him well. Therefore, the Jews began to persecute Jesus because he did this on a Sabbath. The Gospel of the Lord. Some years ago, I was sitting in a doctor's waiting area, and of course you're bored, and this was before the advent of cell phones, and you just had their selection of magazines to read. And sometimes you just get what you get. And there was one headline in one of the women's magazines sitting there that caught my eye. It was called "Dealing with the Psychic Vampire." And I thought, well, that's kind of a little intriguing. It had nothing to do with vampires, but it was about the psychic vampire, the person who sucked all your energy out by talking about their problems all the time. And one of the examples in the article was a lady who had a friend who called her every day on the phone to visit, and they would talk about a half hour or so. But the conversation always came back to the friend's hip and her bad hip and the pain she felt in her hip. The lady every day had to listen to this friend talk about her hip. She tried to turn the conversation to other things, but they all went back to her hip. The lady got tired of this, and finally she told her friend, she said, "Look, I'll talk to you about anything you want, but not your hip." Unfortunately, the friend never called back again. That friend was consumed by her pain. Her pain had replaced who she was. Chronic pain can do that to people. Not just physical pain, but mental pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. It can imprison us and become our identity. Jesus asked the paralytic, "Do you want to be well?" It seems like a foolish question. Well, of course he'd want to be well. He'd been sick for 38 years. But perhaps he had become identified with his condition, with his own spiritual pain. Maybe he found self-worth in that, attention. Perhaps he had low self-esteem. Who knows? When Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be well?" his response isn't, "Yeah, I want to be well." It's, "Well, I can't get in there. Somebody else is always getting in there in front of me." It's always somebody else's fault. And then Jesus heals him. But later, Jesus goes out of his way to find him and say, look, you've been set free, you've been healed, you've been set free from the prison of your pain. Now don't go back there again. I set you free, don't go back. And how does the man respond? He goes back to the authorities and fingers Jesus. The pain is just too much for him. He had become so identified with that pain that he couldn't live without it. Jesus had ruined his life in his eyes. He took away the one thing that gave him, he thought, his identity, his pain. You know, we can never really know what pain people are experiencing in their lives. Some people talk about their pain a lot, and it's good for people to share their pain. And then there are others too that they keep it all inside. They hold it in. They don't talk about it. We look at their life and we think, oh, their life is so easy. They've got everything. They've got a nice house or a nice car or whatever. But inside we don't see the pain they might really have, and we judge them. In a sense, we're imprisoning ourselves in our own judgmentalism. So today, let us focus not on our problems. We've all got problems right now. A lot of people are suffering. Everybody's suffering. How can we be a helper today? Look for the blessings in your life today. You know, I was just thinking yesterday, I thought, gee, what I wouldn't give to have the problems that I had a month ago. They seem so small right now. I was so blessed. If who can even, I'm sure you probably can't even talk about it either. This has been a wake-up call for all of us. Focus on your blessings today. Lord, help us not to focus on our problems, but on today's blessings. Lord, don't let us go back to the prison of our pain. Heal us. Let us take up our mat and walk away with faith and gratitude.